Now, practically every year at CES, NVIDIA will come along and announce a new mobile GPU, which gives laptop makers a really good reason to go and update or revamp a lot of their existing systems. But that's not happening in 2024. So if you're ASUS, what do? Well, you go and take one of your most popular gaming systems and you completely redesign it anyways. You give it a brand new chassis, a better screen, and a design that really matches the kind of performance that you're getting from the system. And at least on the new Zephyrus, it's making a really big impact. Now here on the right, we have the new Zephyrus G14, and on the left, we have the G16. Now obviously they have a very similar design, and they're both gonna be available in black and silver for both models. But the big thing is that if you look at the chassis, it's significantly thinner and significantly lighter than before. For the G14, we're talking about 200 grams lighter than the previous model and 4 millimeters thinner. And the space savings are even bigger on the G16, which is 450 grams lighter and 6 millimeters thinner. So that's a big difference over the previous model. Now you're probably asking, how did ASUS do this? Well, the big change is that ASUS is using a new CNC milled unibody aluminum frame, and that gives a huge increase in strength and durability, but also cutting down on overall weight. The other big difference is that, especially for the G14, while the previous model could support up to an RTX 4090, that's not true on the G14. This one is limited to an RTX 4070, and that's basically because ASUS noticed that the vast majority of systems that they were selling were using a 4070, a 4060, or a 4050 GPU. So they're like, why don't we just make the system designed expressly for those SKUs? And so that's exactly what they did. Now, that also gives ASUS more freedom in the design space because that allowed them to put a 75 watt-hour battery in the G14 and then a 90 watt-hour battery in the G16. So you should be looking at a bit better longevity too. And it's important to note that while the G14 tops out at a 4070, the G16 does support up to a 4090, so you have that option on the larger machine if you want it. Another big change is that for the first time ever on an ROG gaming machine, ASUS is giving the Zephyrus line OLED displays. We're talking a 120 Hz display on the G14 and a 240 Hz panel on the G16. And as you can see, the screens are super vibrant. They have good brightness, and you're still getting a really speedy response rate at 0.2 milliseconds, along with support for NVIDIA G-Sync. Now, some other small changes is that if you look at the keycaps, ASUS says they're about 12% larger than before, and they did that mostly by decreasing the gap between the keys, which is able to make the actual size of the keys a little bit bigger so they're easy to use. And then check out these touchpads, especially the one on the G16, that's absolutely massive. You're still getting all your standard gamer stuff like RGB backlit keyboards, but I really like that you get a ton of ports on this thing too. So on the right, you get a USB-A and a USB-C port, along with a micro SD card reader on the G14 and a full-size card reader on the G16. And then if we switch over to the left side, you can see that there's a 3.5 millimeter jack, another USB-A, another USB-C, full-size HDMI, and then in the back, we have ASUS's new proprietary slim charging port. And I do want to emphasize ASUS because this is not going to be restricted solely to ROG machines. This is going to be ASUS's new standard charging port for more of their high-performance systems. We're talking in the range of 150 watt TDP or more. Now for me, who has been kind of awaiting the proliferation of USB-C charging, that's a little disappointing, but I get it because the energy efficiency of USB-C charging above about 150 watts is not so great so far, and components for those charging tech is really expensive. So ASUS is doing this, and also by having a proprietary charging port, it leaves the other USB-C ports to do stuff like connect to peripherals, connect mice, data, what have you. Aside from this new CNC aluminum design, which by the way, looks awesome. It's super sleek, it's super minimalist, but it's also really sturdy. And you can see ASUS left room on the side for speakers, which is something I really appreciate. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I think they said the most powerful speakers on any 14-inch laptop out there. So that remains to be seen. It's a little loud in here, so we can't really fully test it right now. One thing I really appreciate is that ASUS has kind of toned down the gameriness of these new laptops design. So if I spin this around, you can see there's no RGB on the lid. It's just a single slash with a bunch of LEDs inside. Obviously, you can turn that on or off as you want, but I really like it's more of a classy design, understated, but it still looks sophisticated and very premium because you still have that aluminum on the lid as well as the deck. Now, unfortunately, we're still waiting for an official price for both the G14 and the G16, but with an expected release date sometime in Q1, we should know that pretty soon. Now, of course, the brand new Zephyrus line isn't the only new things that ASUS has in store for CES, because there's revamped versions of the ROG Strix line, and there's also refreshes for the older M16 and X lines. There's even a new 16-inch model for the Tough Gaming family. So for more details on everything CES related, please check out Engadget.com and then come back to us on YouTube for more news and videos.